All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Paul from Changescape Web, and I'm joined by Ken Tucker from Changescape Web, Jeff Steck from Telerica Systems, and Ian Cana from Outsource Marketing. And we have an awesome guest today, Rand Fishkin. He's the CEO and co-founder of SparkToro. Is that how you pronounce it? Former co-founder and CEO of Moz and co-founder of inbound.org and author of the book Lost and Founder. So we're going to be talking to him. He's an SEO expert, a heavyweight in the SEO world. So we're going to be talking to him about like what's coming up. So Ken, start with you, and Rand, thank you for being on our podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I just want to confirm so that everyone knows I haven't done SEO in 7 years. I really have no idea what's going on in that field, and I don't want to present myself as something that I'm not. So lots of marketing experience.
Yeah.
Obviously SEO for a long time, but not since 2018.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, Rand. Anything else you want to say to introduce yourself, real quick?
Oh gosh. Well, in addition to running SparkToro, I also run another company called Snackbar Studio. So for those of you who are in the world of indie video games, we should have our first title, The Snackbar at the End of the World, out at the end of 2026, which is quite exciting.
Very cool.
All right. Awesome. So Rand, one of the things that I've seen from you recently is your focus on zero-click search and zero-click marketing. You wrote a paper or an article recently that talked about, only about 37% of Google searches in the US and UK result in a click to the open web. Can you explain what zero-click search is, and what does it mean for small businesses who rely on organic traffic?
Yeah. So essentially, I'm sure you have all had this experience. You're at the grocery store shopping. Maybe you got friends with you. It's very hectic. You pull up your phone, you search Google for Moroccan spices for chicken marinade. And then you gotta scroll down and you click on one of the results that you think is right. And then the recipe website loads and a little video is over on top of all the information you're trying to get to. And it's extremely annoying. And so you click the back button. This is 2015 Google. Well,
Right.
Fast forward 10 years and Google has realized how frustrating that experience is. And so instead of forcing you to click, they have kindly summarized from the, top 10, 20, 50, 100, few hundred sites. They've summarized the most common spices that appear on those pages around chicken marinades, similar to how a large language model would, and then give you those ingredients right at the top of the web page, so you don't have to click anything. The results are instantly there. And anyone who's done this knows that Google Weather does this. They do it for maps and addresses. They do it for flights. They do it for hotels. They do it for sports scores. They do it for where can I watch this show? They'll instantly give results. How old is Paul Rudd? Anyone want to guess? He's shockingly old. It is
54?
unbelievable. Yeah. I think he's 50. Yeah, 54, 55. He's 10 years older than me. He looks like he's 20 years younger. It's flipping annoying. Anyway, Google can give you these answers instantly, preventing preventing the need for a click. And that is what is called zero-click searches. It's a term coined by actually DuckDuckGo's Gabriel Weinberg in 2011. And in 2019, when we did the first study around zero-click searches, we found that 50%, it was like 49.6, 50% of all Google searches ended without a click. Today, that number is 60%. And as you pointed out, there's another 5-6% that's going to Google's own properties. And so the open web is receiving about a third of all the search traffic that Google conceivably might send, which really disrupts a lot of things for publishers of all kinds, but certainly small businesses too.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there more industries that have been more impacted than others that you've seen? Yeah, I know you've rattled off several.
Yeah. So the biggest one in our recent study was arts and entertainment. So I mentioned the Paul Rudd search, right? If you're searching for things around movies and television or art galleries or concerts, all that type of information. Google is doing a really great job of summarizing and answering that right up front. And then there's industries that are barely affected, things like heavy machinery and engineering. Google's not providing a ton of answers of, what type of pipe fitting can I use for this particular heavy water distillation process. They tend not to answer those types of searches. And so, look, this is if I were in search, if I were in SEO, I would be thinking about, are my queries affected and how much? And I think the bigger question, which I'm sure all of you folks have been thinking about a lot, is traffic still the right KPI? Do we really care about traffic? Like, if I run a plumbing business or a landscaping business or a real estate, I'm a real estate broker or I'm an attorney, an estate planner, do I care if people get my contact information directly on Google versus on my website? Do I care if they're calling me because they saw my number on Google Maps instead of on my website? Why is traffic the thing that I'm worried about, right? Web traffic is just in many ways, a vanity metric,
Right?
It's sort of like social media followers. It doesn't turn into dollars. What turns into dollars? Phone calls and emails and requests to do business.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see local search being affected in the same way? Like if I type in plumber near me?
Okay. This is a frustrating reality of how clickstream data is provided. So in order to do these studies, SparkToro, we work with a company previously we worked with a company called JumpShot. Unfortunately, they're no longer around. Now we work with a company called Datos, which I like very much. They have an excellent clickstream panel. Clickstream panel means you basically have millions of devices. So, phones, desktops, laptops, where every URL that the user visits in a browser, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, whatever you want, is recorded and then and time stamped. So you can see sort of how long is being spent on each page. You can see how many visits go to various websites and individual URLs. Then that data is sent to a broker, a system that essentially anonymizes it. And then they will provide sort of anonymized aggregated information to folks like me. SparkToro pays a healthy amount, but certainly not as much as many. And from that, we're able to tell things like, hey, this website is growing, this website's shrinking. People who land on these URLs tend to also go to these URLs or tend to not go anywhere afterwards. And that's how we get the data we get. What it doesn't provide is mobile app data. So if you are on your mobile device and you perform a search in Chrome or the Google search bar for plumber near me, and you click on something that opens up Google Maps, that unfortunately the clickstream data provider cannot see that. And so we don't know what's going on there. Those are removed from the sort of zero click numbers. But yeah, frustrating. And unfortunately, I don't have a great answer to that particular question.
All right.
And Rand, just a quick question along these lines. Does the data also provide search intent? Like I can see informational stuff being very relevant for zero click, but of course, once you get into commercial and transactional, that's the scary stuff for businesses. Is there any correlation to that or even an ability to see that at this point?
Yeah, we did a study. So great question. What I did is I took all of the searches. This is, I think this is in Q4. I took all of the searches. I can tell you guys, it's a royal pain in the butt. Took 320 million searches, which turned into some, 60 million odd keywords or something like that. And ran them through. Well, first I took 1,000 random ones and I hand classified their search intent. So informational, transactional, navigational, informational. And then, which that's a row of pain. And then I tried to get a large language models API. So I tried, ChatGPT and Gemini, a bunch of other ones, to classify those searches correctly. And after lots of prompting and some help from, I don't know if you folks know Brittany Muller, she used to work with me at Moz and then sort of became an AI expert over the last decade. And she actually helped me figure out how to classify using, I think we used GPT-4o mini, which thank God, because the costs were not too high, and then classified all the keywords. We got 96% accuracy versus hand classification. So I think pretty solid.
Yeah.
And then looked at those terms and phrases and how that sort of changed the equation. Not a tremendous amount of delta, to be honest. Informational keywords are definitely where you see the most instant answers and zero-click behavior. Navigational is where you see the least. So if somebody types in your brand name or your website, they tend to just go to your website, which is good news. But commercial and transactional, a lot of people, staying inside Google's ecosystem for those types of searches, going to Google Shopping, going to YouTube. YouTube is a huge destination for commercial and transactional searches, which is one of the reasons why if I was thinking about, what I might do in marketing, I might be on YouTube, because I think a lot of people go there to get their questions answered. And then the click-through is generally higher than informational, but not massively. I want to say maybe 10, 15%.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
So you kind of answered this a little bit when you talked about the AI overviews, when it just gives you the answers, and that's one factor of AI powered search. Are there other search factors that are being influenced by AI?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, my understanding today is that, first off, if you're doing searches, obviously inside of LLMs, right? I go to ChatGPT to get answers about these particular things, which it looks like, according to the latest SEM Rush study. I don't know if you guys saw that. I was just able to read it day before yesterday and filmed a video about it. I thought they did an absolutely outstanding job. I credit a little bit of that to, I think Mike King was involved in that for My Pull Rank. He's obviously, sort of a genius on this stuff. And their analysis looked at 80 million click streams that visited ChatGPT, and then what they did in there. 30% of those had essentially overlap with the things you would do at Google. There were informational, navigational, transactional, commercial types of searches. 70% were come up with a clever character for my Dungeons and Dragons campaign, like stuff that you wouldn't do in Google, or, hey, create Python code to crawl this web page, right? Again, not do it in Google. So those searches, if you consider that search, those are absolutely being dominated by, AIs, what we call AIs, large language models. But even inside of Google, my understanding is that a lot of how Google is like evolving from the old link graph and the how they're layering things on top of user signals and user and usage signals, which obviously, according to their Department of Justice testimony, was the biggest ranking signal, right, that they use, is essentially similar to what LLMs do. So they look across the web for trusted sources, and if lots of trusted sources mention, the thing you're searching for plus several brand names, those brand names are associated with entities. Those entities are associated with websites. That's what they're going to return first. And so you're getting this world that is less based on the type of SEO that I used to do, right? Back at Moz, which was essentially like build lots of links, build lots of content, try and get lots of clicks, and more to the world that I think local search has been doing for forever. My friend David Mim, when I was at Moz, we acquired his company, and he built out the Moz local product. And things like citation consistency and getting mentioned all over the web, especially in places that were locally relevant to the geographic area, that was hugely important in local search back in those days. I don't know if it still is. You guys would know. But that is kind of what's powering large language models, right? It's words that frequently come after and around other words. Amanda, my VP marketing here at SparkToro, and I have taken to calling it spicy autocomplete, which I think is a good sort of moniker to remember what ChatGPT is really doing.
Yeah.
So following up a little bit on the zero-click searches, how far do you think Google's going to go with this? And if they keep going down this path, would it be more important for businesses to be found in LLM searches? Because I mean, you could see if they really go down this path, you could almost make an argument that at some point, do you need a website?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I think, do you guys remember back in 2007, 2008, where Facebook was trying to convince every small business that instead of building a website, they should just have a Facebook page because that's how everything was going to be found? And lots of businesses kind of fell for it at the time.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And so, it would not completely surprise me if a long-term future iteration of Google is sort of like, why do you have a website? Your Google Maps or local or whatever they're going to call it in 10 years presence is all you need. That would not shock me one bit. I think it's completely plausible to imagine a future like that. What I would say though is don't do that today. Like, your website is still hugely important. Lots of people, myself included, very often double check information that we find around the web.
Right.
And go to a website. I think one of the worst culprits of this was Google had that restaurant program where they would call and make reservations automatically for you. You guys familiar with that one?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the program was called. I think it might still sort of exist, but I have never trusted it, because if you go to a lot of restaurant websites, they'll say, don't use the Google reservation system. We don't answer those. We ignore those calls. And so, yeah, tons of people, show up at restaurants thinking Google made a reservation for them, and it didn't work, right? Like, they don't want the Google computer calling them and making auto reservations. They're like, yeah, go to OpenTable, go to Resi, go to Talk, go to, our website and make that yourself. I find the same thing with hotels. I had one experience years ago where I booked with a third-party platform, showed up at the hotel. They were like, no, we have no record of this. And ever since then, I have booked all my hotels through the hotel website because I trust nobody else. And it's just not worth it,
Yeah, and what's interesting about what you said earlier is that about the whole website thing is Google Business Profile used to have that feature where you could create a simple, basic website. That's gone.
Oh,
so
interesting.
So having said all this, how can small businesses and local service businesses benefit from these AI search results? How can they leverage that and use it to their advantage?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I've said this a couple of times recently. I've only just come around to thinking this is where the future is headed. Weirdly, I think it's PR. I think if we rewind 50 years, right? It's 1975, 1980, whatever. And you are thinking about, hey, how am I going to promote my local small business? Doing things like, sponsoring the local girls soccer team and getting your name in the paper and, fixing the whatever problems in your city and getting local folks to cover you as a result of that. That was huge, right? Running TV ads and billboards, radio, all that kind of stuff, being on the local radio show, being the person that the, journalist called when there was an issue around this thing because you were notable. That's what got you into people's minds as the sort of local leader in your space. And LLMs work this way. They work this same way, right? Where essentially they're looking for, hey, what is the estate planning person or business that gets mentioned the most when we see estate planners, Seattle, Washington, being talked about on the internet? What's in the Seattle Times? What's in the Capitol Hill blog? What's in the Stranger? What's in the, Como 4 news website? What's on the local NPR station? All of those things. And, now, of course, with the distribution of media, we're talking about 5,000 other small local influencers and social media accounts and YouTube channels and podcasts, blah, 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 blah. So there's way more opportunities. But Google, all the large language models, Bing for sure, they're all looking at who is being mentioned the most around this topic. And the way to change that, the way to get yourself into those results is not classic SEO stuff. It's PR, right? How do I do things that are worthy of being talked about in the news, by the press, by influencers, and then have them actually mention me, my brand? That, I don't know. I actually think that's way more fun than doing SEO personally. Like, it's right. It's a lot more creative practice and sort of like, okay, how do I, come up with something people are going to talk about?
Yeah.
But it's working too. There was a I can point you to it later, but Stephen Lord, I think is his name, put up a LinkedIn post where he showed how he basically did just a little bit of this stuff and changed the results almost overnight. I think it took like a week or something in Google for how they referred to him and his business and what he came up for at the top. And he was like, holy crap, just changing the language around what I'm associated with has this almost instant effect.
Wow. That would be really interesting to see that it comes back to that after 50 years.
Right. It's, look, I think, do you, my early days in SEO, there were all these people who were like, all this manipulation stuff that Rand Fishkin and Moz are talking about, like that's going to, that's just while Google is trying to figure out their algorithm. Eventually, they're going to get to a place where it goes back to the basics of, is your business liked and trusted and the most relevant and the, most well-known for whatever you do. And it's a little funny to be, I sort of poo-pooed that for 20 years. And now here we are. I'm kind of like, I think they finally figured it out. Look at that.
One of the things that I do when I give talks is I use the old grumpy man in the chair ad.
Okay.
And you can Google it, look up grumpy man in the chair ad. It was from the 50s. It was to sell print media. And it was the fundamentals. It's the, I don't know your business. I don't know what you stand for. I don't know who your customers are. Now, what are you trying to sell me? And yeah, that's what you're talking about. We're not gaming the system with keywords anymore and just writing content for keywords to draw traffic, because we'll talk about that in a minute. But like you said, that's a vanity metric now. It's the business. It's what do you stand for? What are you saying? And what are you doing? And how are you solving people's problems? And we're kind of going back to that. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of those, it's a ton of those fundamentals. And the only really, it's not new, but I want to say the only thing that is become much more powerful than years past is how notable are you? That notoriety, that sort of association from sources of influence in my field or my local area, when they talk about the problem I solve, I am frequently or most frequently mentioned. That tends to have outsized impact in all sorts of modern discovery systems, social media platforms, content platforms like YouTube, and certainly now, Google and large language models.
Yeah.
It's not always the greatest thing, right? I think like a lot of people point to the abuse of these systems through, there's sort of this way that you can game the algorithm by being very extreme, right? And so, for example, in political discourse, many people point out that 2024 has far more extreme left and right views than 1984 or 1994 or something like that, 1992. And I generally agree with that. And I think most of that is because algorithms push the stuff that is most extreme. But you can take advantage of that from a marketing perspective, not necessarily by going political, but by doing things that are unusual, doing things that make you stand out from the crowd. I mean, has it been 20 years since Seth Godin wrote Purple Cow? But seems to be more relevant now than when it was written.
Yeah, and a lot of it goes back to trust and credibility, and that's why Google reviews are so important.
Yeah,
people
this is
trust
a good point, Paul. Yeah, I think one of the things that I do see language models getting smarter about, that I don't see social algorithms getting smarter about, is a degree of, they look for trustworthiness So, your social algorithms look for engagement and things that predict return engagement. And so extremism and, outrage and anger, emotions that kind of trigger those types of things tend to garner a lot of engagement. Hence, you can game a lot of social systems with them. That does not work well with large language models, doesn't work well with Google. If you outrage and anger lots of your customers, for example, or potential customers, you will not perform well in Google. You won't perform well in large language models. Oh, you guys are going to love this one. I got an email yesterday. Oh no, it was a LinkedIn message from a guy who was pointing out, and he'd written about this publicly, so I can send you the link. He was pointing out how ChatGPT, I think this is for an Australian company, ChatGPT was giving an answer anytime you asked about this particular company or this field, giving an answer that this particular business was too expensive and shouldn't be in your consideration set. And the business owner and the guy who's doing the marketing were very upset about this because it's super inaccurate. Like, they're one of the less expensive providers in this particular field. Turns out you can do this in ChatGPT where you say, hey, can you provide the source for why this business is too expensive? And Search GPT, I think if you have that turned on, will cite one Reddit post from 7 years ago where someone with like 3 upvotes, where someone had written that the business was too expensive. That's it. That's the only citation that was in the language model for that particular thing. And so changing that can change the outcome, right? Getting a bunch of Reddit posts saying they're not too expensive, they're affordable, those kinds of things can change the outcome of what the large language model returns. So it's influenceable and can be relatively fast if you know what to look for, know what to change.
Yeah, so just like we used to say, Google yourself or Google your business once in a while just to see what people are saying. Now it's like go into ChatGPT or Claude and have a conversation with the AI about your business and yourself just to see what it says. Yeah, good tip.
Yeah.
And ask it how to rank better. Right? It'll tell you.
Tools. I want to say there's a new tool that is some folks are working on, like around this type of stuff, where you can figure out all the sort of prompts that people might give an AI around your particular business. And I want to say
AI for AI prompts.
Yeah, totally. It's getting so meta, people. I'll see if I can find one of those. It's fascinating what people are building around this, which, no surprise, right? Like, this is obviously a needed service.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
Hey, Rand, one of the things we saw in your study was it talks about how Google has a preference, and it's no surprise actually, but it has a preference for sending traffic to its own properties. And I think the stat that's in your study is that 30% of search clicks are sent to Google properties like YouTube, Google Flights, Google Maps. You talked a little bit about that, but how does this impact competition, especially for small businesses?
Yeah, well,
and what can they do about it?
So the good news for small businesses is a lot of that traffic that is self-preferencing behavior is going to Google Maps.
Yeah.
Which I would generally argue is very similar to going to your website, right? If someone goes to your Google Maps listing, or they're searching for hotels in Milan, and they, you are coming up highly because you're very well rated by guests and you fit all these criteria, whatever. That's probably a good thing. I don't know that Google is really stealing traffic from you. To be honest, I think that much more affects the publishing world, and especially the ad revenue driven platforms, right? So if you were a content hub who monetized through display advertising, man, it is brutal. Like you can see all these businesses in that sector just getting destroyed by, Google update after Google update. And I don't know that I would really invest in those types of businesses today. I think that it's a little bit of a losing proposition unless you can find a way to be subscriber funded. But for a small business, especially a local small business, Google stealing your traffic to Google Maps is not a bad thing. I think, again, I go back to traffic might have been a vanity metric all along. And what your KPI should be, the thing that you really care about is sort of sales, growing people's, searches for your particular brand, being notable in the media and sources of influence that your audience pays attention to. Those things really matter because that's what's going to drive business and keep you in business versus your competition. Google stealing your traffic, I don't know if I care.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially when, back in the day of Yellow Pages, people going to Google Maps or getting pushed to Google Maps is essentially Google saying, here's the business in, the Yellow Pages, to take an old metaphor or, awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Like, I don't totally care if someone finds my phone number or my email address or my whatever sign up form via these places versus via my own site. And I know a lot of small business owners who, they measure their marketing success by how many calls did we get? How many walk-ins did we get? How many sales did we get?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a long time where, like, in SEO world, we'd poo-poo those guys and we'd be like, hey, you got to pay attention to your website traffic and your rankings, and maybe not. Right.
Yeah,
your marketer should be, but you as the business have your North Star metrics, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting. You said we talk about credibility and trust, and Google uses backlinks for that. It's like, are the backlinks to this website coming from a credible source?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have a good sense anymore, like I did back in my Moz days, of how important links from important places are versus, for example, a brand mention, right? So if, I don't know, if the Seattle NPR station mentions Geraldine's, my wife's, new book that came out, is that not as good as if they link to her website with the page where you go to buy the book?
Oh, I think it is. Yeah. I mean, I think brand mentions are very important.
Yeah. So it's one of these tough things where I don't want to say links are dying, because I don't have the data to show that. But my suspicion is that the value of links are on the downswing, and the value of mentions and brand notoriety is on the upswing. That's certainly true for a large language model. LLMs don't give two craps about whether someone links to you or not. And to be honest, if I think back to my SEO days, that is such a freeing concept. It is so delightful to think, you know what? I just need to be mentioned here. I don't need to care about a link, because, man, I don't know about you guys, but I spent 12 years like begging people to link to me.
Right.
And it was the worst, just the worst, going to all these like whatever journalists or blogs or websites and being like, hey, I saw you said something nice about us. Would you please put the link in? Like, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, Google has alluded to that. They say links are still important, but they haven't come right out and say it, but they've kind of hinted around that moving forward, links are going to slowly become less important. And I think it's what you just said. It's brand mentions are going to become more important.
Yeah. I mean, thank God. The era of begging for links just sucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've kind of talked around the zero-click marketing, and you said I think in one of your blogs, zero click marketing is the way things have to go. And in your study where you talked about the 332 million, I think, wow, that's a lot of data points. But you said, and I'm looking at your article now, from 1997 to 2017, search was an excellent place to start marketing. Today, search is largely a reward for doing marketing right everywhere else. Can you kind of dig into that in the zero click era and how it's driving things, what marketing success or what places businesses should be putting their marketing? We've hit on some of it a little bit, but I just kind of want to wrap it up in one nice question here for you.
Yeah. So I think about sort of all the elements of, like you said, Jeff, the 1950s model of marketing, or the Ogilvy era of good marketing, which is, do people know you? Do they like you? Do they trust you? And do you stand out from the crowd in a unique way where the value proposition that you provide is substantially better than all your competitors, at least for a subset of your market? And my sense is that, from all the studies we've done over the last 7 years at SparkToro, this is the direction that the internet is moving in, the discoverability internet is moving in. There are absolutely, don't get me wrong, there are tactics that are unique to each platform, unique to each form of marketing, each channel, that can make you stand out in bigger ways. I don't want to poo-poo those, whether it's, hey, links are still working in Google, and if you have a great way to get lots of links from lots of sources, sure. Whatever outrageous content or emotionally driven engagement bait on social media can still drive, clicks and engagement there. I agree. But long term, I think that a lot of these fundamentals are what all the algorithmic based discovery systems, from the classic ones to the social ones to the what YouTube is trying to do, what Facebook's trying to do, what Reddit's trying to do, what LinkedIn is trying to do, and what Google is trying to do. All of these are moving in this direction of, are you a credible business that people know, like, and trust? Are you right for the type of person who's looking for this particular business, right? There's a lot of customization that goes into Google search. There's a lot of customization that goes into large language models and AI tools. That these platforms know a lot about you or whomever is doing the searching, and that bias will be introduced into the results that they serve. And so if you are the right choice along all these vectors for these searching customers, you're going to be the one that shows up. When I say SEO or search is a channel that rewards people who've already done marketing well, what I mean is you get your business to be known, like, trusted, notable, have that unique value proposition, and have those associations talked about across the web. That's going to get you to the top of the results, whether you're doing classic kinds of search marketing or not.
Mm-hmm. And then that body of work, that reputation, like you said, that's raising your chances of appearing in the zero-click results, being taken. If you're on the Google Maps, you used the example a minute ago of one of the zero clicks is, or Google self-referencing is going to Maps. So you win the Maps, right? There's work to be done there, and the reputation, the reviews, the content you put out there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think this future is, if I sort of think about it at the core level, it's really, what's the value you're providing to your field and your customers, and are you able to build some notoriety because of that? What's going to make you stand out in that field? And I don't think a lot of the tricks and tips that often powered, how I'd help people in search 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, most of those are slowly or quickly disappearing, right? Hey, I can use a bunch of I'm sure you guys remember this, like a bunch of anchor text links. And if I get people to use the right anchor text and point to me, I can, what do we call that? Like Google bowling, right? Or for example, I can do negative things to my competitors, right? Point bad links from bad places and get them removed from the results or downranked in the systems. I hope, I don't think that works anymore. Keyword stuffing, that's going away.
Yeah, Google has figured a lot of this stuff out, but and given Google's propensity to send traffic to their own properties, I can see where having like a YouTube channel would be even more important. I mean, it's important now, but I can see where that would almost become a requirement.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me in the least. That a lot of the future is play toward these platforms self-preferencing behavior. It's already true. Like, can you really have a successful local business with no Google Maps listing or presence? Like that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
At least in sort of developed economies. I think in developing economies is a different story because there's a lot more kind of local, just geographic behavior, right, that happens around that.
Sure.
But man, I don't know if you can reasonably have a hotel that functions in a developed country with no Google Hotels presence, or if your airline refuses to participate in Google Flights, like
yeah,
doesn't go so well.
Yeah, we had Mari Smith on a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so, and she was talking about how Facebook's algorithm now is less follower driven. As a matter of fact, followers are really falling out of favor very quickly. And there's a new opportunity for businesses when they create content for that content to be shown to people who've demonstrated similar likes or interests. So it's much more interest based. Therefore, there's more virality potentially available again on that platform than there has been in a very long time. Kind of leads to my next question, which is content marketing in the age of zero-click searches. You've got to find that content that's going to resonate. It's different than it's not a 2,500 word blog post. Could be, but it's not necessarily that anymore. We've talked about video. How do you see that kind of taking shape? And one of the things that I immediately think about is the plumbers out there who own their own businesses. They are not going to be comfortable getting in front of the camera, doing YouTube shorts or Instagram reels. So how are they going to be able to survive this and adapt, or will they?
So I'll answer the latter part of your question first, Ken,
Okay.
and then come back to the former, which this has always been true. If you are good at promotion and marketing and sort of being charismatic in front of a camera or on the written page, for the last 200 years, you've had a competitive advantage over all the other players in your field, right? So, go back to, 1800s Old West. And if you were really good at sort of, writing up flyers and making them compelling, and you were a great illustrator, you could make your tavern like more notable than the other guy's tavern down the street. That's the same kind of advantage that you have today if you are very personable and good at explaining things and, good at making connections in your local plumbing field, right? That's just fair or not fair. That's how a free market economy works, right? Especially one that has media, free and open media. I think that's far preferable to a model where the only people who can show up are the ones who pay. So, you take the good with the bad. Going back to what Mari said, I 100% agree with her that. So TikTok years ago, and I actually kind of hate this about TikTok, but I also recognize the ingenuity of their invention, which was essentially that TikTok said, even when they first came out, we don't care how many followers you have. We don't really care that much about engagement streaks, meaning like every post that you put up does really, really well, or in their case, every video that you put up does well. Instead, what they looked at was, how do we addict the most people to watching a short video and staying on the platform? And all they looked at really was the consumers' amount of consumption, amount of hours spent, and whether a video predicted that someone would go away or would stay. And that innovation in sort of, algorithmic bias meant that followers lost their value inside of TikTok. I think there was a notable study a few years ago that pointed out that of all the social media platforms, a TikTok follower was worth the least, because essentially, if you have a YouTube channel and you have followers there, or you have a Facebook page and you had followers there, go back in time 5 years, or a Twitter account. Like I had a Twitter account with 500,000 followers, and this is pre-Elon, right? So the platform was still sort of functional, and the number of people who would see each post that I made on Twitter was extremely high because so many people followed me. And so Twitter would show my posts to a large number of people. Now, they would bring that down if I included a link in that post. They would bring that down if my last few posts didn't do well on Twitter. But TikTok is sort of agnostic to whether an account has lots of followers. That doesn't mean that they're going to show those followers that account and the posts that they put up, unless they believe that those posts will addict those people more to the platform, keep them on the platform. And so the same thing Mario was talking about, that interest-based rather than follower-based thing, meant that you could be a totally new account, your very first time on TikTok, post a video, and if the algorithm liked it because it kept people on TikTok, kept them scrolling, kept them watching, that could be shown to millions or tens of millions of people. Kind of a very, very big change. And now all the social platforms are copying TikTok because they see how successful that model has been.
Yeah.
Arguably, from a societal standpoint, you can see lots of researchers saying, like, guys, this is bad. This is really, really bad. You don't want to incentivize addiction to short form videos. We could get into the side effects of that, which the internet has kind of termed brain rot, right? Where you have no attention span, and you sort of believe everything that's in your feed is like what's going on in the real world versus using your own experiences to determine that.
Yeah.
But
contributing to idiocracy.
yeah, right. Like I think it's interesting to me that, and I think this is, I'll tell you guys personally, I was in favor of, I know, Trump initially proposed this, but I was in favor of the TikTok ban. I thought it was one of the things that was actually very wise from his first presidential term. I was glad to see the Biden administration continue on that process and start to make TikTok illegal in the US. And I was frustrated when, Trump sort of changed his mind about TikTok when he came in the second time. I recognize that, TikTok was helpful to him in his third presidential run. But I think he should have stuck to his guns. I wish he had, because I think the Chinese version of TikTok, the one that's popular over there, different algorithmic system, and it is the Chinese government sort of recognized that they had an addiction problem, and so they controlled on this. And I get nervous, friends. Like, I think the direction that these social media systems go around engagement, addiction focused engagement is, I don't know. Yeah, I feel bad for the kids, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So, Rand, paid search, Google Ads. I think you have some research that said click-through rates are going down, and like 1%, only 1% of Google searches result in a click on a Google ad.
Yeah.
How is that going to play out from an effectiveness standpoint? I mean, it can't imagine Google's happy about that, but
So I actually think, Paul, one notable point on that. So 1% of all Google searches result in a click on a paid ad, but Google came out with a stat, I want to say it was last year. It was in one of their earnings reports where they said that paid ads show up on about 20% of all searches. So essentially, if you take those two numbers together, that means that when paid ads are showing, they garner about 5% of the total click-through rate, which is very similar to what people say in Google Ads is the average click-through rate on a paid ad, around 5%. So I would keep that 5% number in mind for when a paid ad is present on a Google search results page, they're getting 5% click-through. If you include the 80% of searches where there are no paid ads showing, it's 1%. That percent has actually stayed remarkably consistent for the last, I don't know what it is, 5-6 years. Like it was going up for a long time. Now it's been remarkably consistent, and essentially Google has been growing their advertising revenue two ways. One, more searches per searcher, and more total searches globally, which our data or Datas's data bears that out. And two, higher ad prices per advertising unit. So the average cost per click.
Yeah, higher cost per clicks. Yeah.
Right. And so that's what the Google earnings report suggests, and that's what the Datos data backs up. So paid search, it's kind of a frustrating thing for me. I think that a ton of the paid search, especially in local small business, is like, yeah, there's the local small business ads. Those can help you somewhat. I don't feel too bad about those, but I know for a lot of small business owners, it's sort of it's like the new mafia, right? It's like Tony Soprano comes to your house. He's like, oh, what a nice brand you got over here. It would be a shame if one of your competitors was to rank above you for that. And that's exactly what Google's doing, right? They're basically saying like, oh, people are searching for your brand, but we're going to let your competitor be on top of the results and get a bunch of those clicks. If you don't pay us protection money, it sucks, like it is.
Yeah, and
that's the best analogy I've heard. I love it.
Yeah.
A lot of small businesses they don't have the budget to spend enough to get results and show a return. And that 80-20, I'm assuming that's a global stat, because about 100% of the searches I do have Google ads. So
yeah. Well, if you think about all the searches for like Moroccan chicken spices, chicken marinade spices, or how old is Paul Rudd? Yeah, exactly. There's lots of searches for celebrities who are wearing swimsuits or whatever it is like that. There's no ads for those, and that is a tremendous amount of activity in Google.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you how small businesses should adjust their ads in response to the increased costs, and it's like the only answer was spend more money or don't pay for ads. I don't know what other answer there is.
I think the other answer is you have to be able to improve your conversion rate.
Right.
So if you can, figure out what your potential customers want that you don't provide, or objections that they have to using your service that could be overcome in some way, pricing, the type of product or service you provide, the way the person answers your phone at your business, the credibility that your website seems to have, whatever it is, like, oh, I'm in this neighborhood and I wasn't sure whether you covered this neighborhood because I couldn't find my neighborhood on your list. And it's like, well, I have your zip code. Well, how could you think, okay, you know what? Include neighborhood names on your Where We Service page. Whatever little thing it is that you have to overcome. If you can do that, then your ads become essentially a higher return on investment because more people who click on them are going to buy from you And so you can afford these higher advertising prices because you're getting the higher conversion rate. I can't tell if Paul agrees with me or if he's very upset.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Okay.
I was thinking if we could have, we got a lot more questions. Maybe we could do this again, but we're coming up on an hour. We could do one more question and come back to it another time because we've got like what?
Yeah, we got lots.
Yeah.
Rand, don't feel bad. We can never read Paul.
It's the body language.
I live in the same city, and I've only seen him maybe a handful of times in the last 5 years. So.
He's a mysterious enigma. It's part of his charm.
Yeah.
Let me throw out the last question, or maybe the last. We'll see if we can squeeze one more in after that. Let's jump to audience research. You had a great article, The Biggest Mistake We Make When Asking Where Are My Customers? So you talk about misidentifying their behavior, your audience's behavior. What are the biggest errors that small businesses make when they're researching their audience, and what are some better methods they should follow?
Yeah, I bet you guys have seen this. I see it on a lot of, not just small business websites, but a lot of people ask, how did you hear about us? Right. And then unfortunately, take away the wrong lesson from those answers. So this will be extremely obvious to everyone, but for some reason, business owners still do it. If you ask people, how did you hear about us? And you get, let's say 5 or 6, general places where lots of people hear about you. Maybe this like local radio station where we're running ads and where we have a presence. And, oh, I heard about you through a friend. Oh, I heard about you through Google. I heard about you through Facebook, whatever it was. If you invest your marketing based on those responses, you will never reach the people you didn't reach.
Mm-hmm.
What if there are lots of people on channels 6, 7, and 8, but you don't get any of them because the people who already come to you, of course, don't come to you from 6, 7, and 8 because you've never invested in 6, 7, and 8 and have no presence there. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest problem. So rather than asking your customers how they heard about you, what you really want to do is find out where your audience goes when they have the problem that you solve, when they have an interest in the category that you're in. Let's say, you do landscaping, right? And it turns out, gosh, a lot of people are discovering landscaping options on Pinterest, and you have never thought about investing in Pinterest at all. So I go to my local, like Seattle Pinterest, I go to Pinterest and I look up Seattle landscaping ideas, and I see like moss gardens and what you can do around the trees in our neighborhood and stuff. And Pacific Northwest, it rains all the time, right? We have this like, very temperate rainforest climate. And so our backyard options are very unique to our unique climate. If you just search for landscaping stuff, ideas, and see Palm Springs landscaping ideas, like that's not going to work no matter how cool it looks. And so, yeah, like that's where I find my landscaping stuff. If you have no presence there, you can't get customers from it. This is why I think audience research, Jeff, is so crucial, right? And there's 3 ways to do it. One is interviews. So finding people who are potentially interested in landscaping or are homeowners or whatever, and then talking to them one-on-one, phone call, video call, in-person, coffee shop, whatever. 2 is surveys. So you can run surveys with a variety of research firms. You could design one yourself and send it to your email list. Those tend to have a lot of bias in them too, especially if you don't get like all the survey methodology stuff, right? Again, problem with sending it to your email list is you will only find out things about your existing customers instead of the broader group. And the third one is to do data that's sort of passively collected at scale. So clickstream data is a form of that. A lot of social media data is a form of that. Search data, right? Keyword research is technically a form of audience research. It's one kind of audience research. How many people search for this versus that? My strong bias is to do that audience research with passively collected data. SparkToro is obviously one of those places, but doing your keyword research in your Google search tools, whatever tools those are. Using a place like SimilarWeb, they have a nice free version that you can use that'll show you people who visited this website also did these things, right? Visited these things, which is similar to what SparkToro offers. You can get social media research through platforms like Audience with an S, but it might be a little expensive for small businesses. But those kinds of things can really help. Passively observe data at scale. I am a huge proponent of this so that you don't make these biased mistakes based on just the people you already reach.
That's a great point. I mean, one of the things that we do, we all come from duct tape marketing background, and John Janch has been a huge advocate for a very long time of interviewing your customers, to find out, what do they say about your unique value proposition. But that's great. You're reaching those customers. It may help you infer who additional ideal customers are, but again, you're still not talking to that huge potential universe out there, because you're not tapping into where they're actually spending time online. So can you talk a little bit about what SparkToro does and what it offers, and how like marketing firms could or small businesses directly could leverage the platform?
Sure. Yeah. So I like to present SparkToro as here's the best way to do audience research, which is get your a list of all the people who are interested in your field and might become customers. Get a list of their home addresses. Learn how to lockpick. Go break into their house. Steal their phone. Get the unlock code, and then look at everything and record everything that they listen to, watch, subscribe to, all their email newsletters, their search history, all that kind of stuff. Now, that is illegal. It is super unethical. I recommend that no one does it, but it is technically the best way you could possibly do audience research. The next best thing is taking a sample cohort of people who match the criteria we're going after, looking at their behavior, and then extrapolating out, okay, the broader group of all the people in the world who do this probably have similar behaviors to this. That's what SparkToro is. So you could go to SparkToro and say, I want to research what interior designers in California are paying attention to. And SparkToro could tell you which podcasts are most popular with them and what subreddits they visit and which LinkedIn accounts they're paying attention to and which platforms they use most and least, and whether ChatGPT is bigger with them or smaller with them than it is with the average American web user, keywords that they might search for in Google. Not all of those will be relevant to whatever you're doing, but that information and the specific parts that are relevant to your business can be huge, right? It can tell you things like, should we be participating in this social platform or that one? Do we need to worry about LLMs with our audience or not? Which words and phrases might we take and put into our Google search tools and do some SEO for? What are content topics of interest that this audience cares about? That type of stuff I think is invaluable. I want to say about 1,500 folks subscribe to SparkToro today to get that type of information, and another 150,000 use the free version. So we have a robust, forever free version that anyone can try, easy to sign up for and play around, see if it's valuable for you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And guys, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was a fun discussion. Lots of interesting topics here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I think it was really good. Ian, you want to take us out?
Sure. Thanks, Rand, for being on the podcast, for joining us today and sharing your great wisdom. And thank you to our listeners and viewers for being with us today. Remember to share. Remember to check out Rand's business, SparkToro. Until next week, folks, keep calm and mark it on. Ciao for now.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.